Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley. And with me today, again, is Dalene Higgins. And I'm so honored to have you back on the show. Dalene is a financial wizard. She's a financial planner. She helps Gen Xers specifically with budgeting and planning for their future. And so we're going to be talking about a little bit of that and some other really great financial advice. And so I'm looking forward to our conversation. Welcome again, Dalene.
Yes, Desiree, I'm glad to be back. Glad you asked. Glad I can cover this topic.
Awesome. Let's start by having you share with us how you decided to found Elevate Finances and what was it that inspired you and led up to that?
I had just reached my financial dream, my financial vision of retiring at the age of 50. And as I was approaching that retirement, I knew I needed something to do. So I looked at all the options. What could I do? What did I want to do? All of those things that would fit in with my new phase of life of quote retirement. And I thought, why not share this excitement, this feeling of you can achieve whatever dream you set out and just share that. And then, yes, dialed into Gen Xers as I feel like we still have time. We can still reach it. We can still make it. And so I found financial coaching in the industry and, yep, started down that path. I've been doing it almost 2 years now. And it's been a lot of fun. I love educating people. I am a numbers nerd. It's what I did for 15 years before I retired with cops who were not so numbers savvy, and we worked together, but we had a great time. And yeah, just transferring that knowledge to the personal finance space, and I've really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that background with us to the listeners who may have not heard you on the previous episode. But today we're going to be focusing a little bit more specifically in terms of how individuals can craft and create their financial vision for the future. Say that fast 3 times.
Yes.
But this is really important, I think, because it's like, how do you achieve this goal if you don't have an idea of where you want to be, right? So why don't you talk us through that a little bit?
Yes. As I reflected back, I realized that really my feet were grounded because of my future vision, because that's what I had set out to do. Now, not everybody will have that same goal, and that's fine. That's not what I'm talking about. We just want to create a future of whatever it is we want to be. And money serves 99% of our lives. Think about areas where it doesn't serve, and it's probably next to nothing. But like recently, I had a client who her goal is 100 doors by the time she's 50. She has 6 years to do that. But yeah, she's very clear in her mind as to why and what she needs to do. And the reason why she came to work with me, I have got to get going on my dream so that I can reach it. Sometimes we don't dream enough anymore. I think as children, there are no boundaries, there are no barriers. We've never been told, right? I think we start out when they're a certain age, but we're never told, oh, you're just dreaming. Oh, you can't do that. And then that gets in our head and we want to start putting those barriers on ourselves. So I encourage my clients to lose those barriers and to just dream and ignore that idea of, as you're thinking of dreaming, I want to do this. And then that little imposter syndrome is going to come in and say, do you really think you could do that? And tell a person yes, and just put it aside and go for what you really want. Because once you recognize what you truly desire, what's in your heart, what's in your mind, and tie those two together, finances almost become just a second nature, as just a creating the path and creating the get there because you can see so clearly where you want to go. So explore that, whatever it is you want. Some people it is to have real estate. Some people it is to retire early, like myself. Others may want to invest in businesses or restaurants or any of those things, or who knows, travel the world while they're working. Whatever it is, create that, create yours. And the other thing I realized when I retired is there's a lot of social norms. I was always told, oh, are you going to travel now that you're retired? No, it's not in me. It's not something I desire. So don't let those society norms hold you back either. Do something that you truly desire. And then I just claimed to mine. I was like, I'm going to do this. And there's something to be said, whether you say it out loud or say it with your partner or whatever. You're like, we're going to do this and we're going to do this and achieve it whenever we want. I told my client, she goes, I know it's crazy. I only have 6 years. And I said, don't diminish that. Because what if it's 52? It's not 50, but it's 52. That is still an accomplishment. So I think that's so important to let your mind free flow, let your mind go, have fun with it. Really, what would you do? No holds bar. And that's what I like to get people thinking about.
Yeah, excellent. I love the point that you made about as children, we are so often told you can do whatever you want, you can be whatever you want. And then there does come that point where it suddenly it has to be reality. Like you're probably not going to be an astronaut or whatever. And so I think we then do put those limiting beliefs on ourselves, right? I was told that I probably wouldn't be able to do that because I have to do something that's realistic or whatever. So I think remembering that there was a point in our lives when anything was possible and harnessing that idea that anything is still possible. And I love that each person has to remember that their goal is their goal. It doesn't have to fit, like you said, into whatever society says or what's the typical thing a retired person does or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a great reminder as well. It is personal to you, and you've got to make that decision for yourself. So I love that. What are maybe some specific steps that people can do as they're trying to craft this vision? Is there something that you can recommend?
Yeah, just sit down, let it flow, start putting the pieces together. Once you know what it is you want to accomplish, or maybe you have a few ideas. If you're sitting with, "Ah, I'd really like to do this, but I'd really like to do this, let it simmer with it. See what feels best. See what fills your drive, your desire, because that's what creates the motivation with money. That's what creates the motivation to change if you need to change, is recognizing that I really want that. I really see myself doing that. So, if something you can see yourself doing, something that really is like your heart burns for it, then that's the one you're going to choose. Now, if there's more than one, so when I claimed mine, I also had more like a short term. I was probably within about 5 years. We were going to buy recreation property, all the toys to go with it so we could enjoy this vacationing kind of with our daughter while she was here and not have to travel so far. We were doing all the campgrounds, which is like going to another neighborhood, and we want to do something different. And so that was a lot of money. It wasn't like it was just a small, like even a small vacation, but yet we worked towards that one as well as our long-term one. So maybe you have visions like that. If you're like, I can't settle on just one, maybe you have a shorter term one, and then you can feed both of them. I did that. I was able to feed into the both of them. The other one was more immediate. I had to make sure that one was quicker to happen, but not neglect that future vision either. It's like being able to serve both of them.
Yeah, great point about maybe staggering them if it's necessary. One may be that short term goal that's you want to achieve quicker than something that's a little bit bigger, and how it's more important to give a little bit more to that closer goal because you've got more time to reach that bigger goal.
Yeah. Yep. And once you achieve your short term goal, everything will be able to go to that long term goal. And that's almost a quick win. Maybe 5 years is not a quick win, but it's a quick win to your long term goal as well. So that hopefully can help listeners as well.
Yeah. And so when we're recording this and when it will air, it's going to be the beginning of 2024. And as a new year, most people are setting those New Year's goals or resolutions to lose weight, save money, whatever the case may be. And so I think this is a great time to talk about strategies that the listeners can use to set those goals and maybe figure out how they can begin budgeting and planning for those. So, what are maybe some suggestions that people are looking at their finances right now? What can they begin doing?
Yes. So definitely looking at the past year without any shame or any guilt. That's not what we want to do. We want to just see, where is our money going? What have we been doing with it? What worked well? What did we enjoy? Because those are the things we want to continue in 2024. We don't need to start over again. And maybe you're somebody that's been hiding from your finances for a while, and that's okay. That's okay. That's very common, but reflect back, look, see where your money's going, and then just start with that today. We are not going to go, "Ugh, we got to cut back on all of these things so that we can fit into this mold. There's no mold to fit into. That is yours to create and yours to define. And so, say you wanted to save for a family vacation this summer. You've got plenty of time right now, beginning of 2024. Determine number one, where you're going and what anticipated cost is. And then, can you find that money in your budget? And the way to do that is, if you're like, I don't have any money left over, is start looking at the trade offs. What are you willing to pause? And if that's the other thing is, we don't always have to give up anything, but if we're wanting to go on vacation this summer and not stress about it, what if we just pause some of these other things and say, okay, we're going to pause these until after vacation? And then just start sticking that away, creating that vacation fund so that when June 1st comes or whenever you're going to take it, you're ready. And then those things you paused, guess what? You get to do them again. And so it's like recognizing that give and that take will, I think, help you propel through budgeting. Budgeting gets a bad rap. There's those immediate emotions of it's restrictive and they're going to make me give up stuff and I have to do this. So I always like to take clients through the very first session. I ask them, what's your favorite 3 expenses that bring you joy that you could not live without? And then what are your bottom 3 expenses? You're okay if they went away. Right then and there, you're immediately looking at your expenses in a different way instead of what is good and what is bad. What brings you joy and what is, yeah, I could get rid of that. And just those loose feelings of, yeah, it would be okay. We could be. And so those are the ones you could pause if you asked yourself those 2 questions at this moment as you're heading into the 2024. Could you pause those 3? Do you even need those 3? I had a client, so we do a exercise between session 1 and session 2 there. You have to write out their bills in due date order. And so she jumps on to session 2 with me. She goes, I canceled 4 of them. I don't need them anymore. And so sometimes just doing some of these little awareness things of writing them down, looking at them differently, asking yourself different questions, you can get out of your head instead of, I got to give up something. And then you're just so blinded and it's just feels so forced. Free yourself up and go, what brings me joy? What do I enjoy spending my money on? If you have a partner or spouse, right? Kids, you're going to want to reflect with them as well. And why not a great time if you're going to go on vacation this summer? Maybe it's a vacation your kids have been dying to go on and you teach them that, okay, we want to go do this vacation that you've been asking for the last 2, 3, 4 years, however as long as it's been. But we're going to have to pause at these 2 things. Are you okay with that? I think we could do it together. And even if you're pausing, say it's an entertainment of some sort that's paid, have them help you decide. So what are we going to do instead of these things that we normally do? And really start teaching them about what they value and what they see. And this is a great segue into teaching them about money without that formal sit down. This is how you do it. This is why you do it. So I think creating conversations around money is so important in any relationship.
Oh my gosh, Dalene, thank you so much for that. So many great points in there. Excellent stuff. I love, first of all, I want to say, just because it is a new year, yes, we can do all these things, but it doesn't have to be January 1st. These kind of things can be done at any point of the year. And sitting down and looking at these things and choosing, do I need to spend my money here? Or would I rather save that money and use it for this fabulous vacation that we all want to go on? And then getting the kids involved. Excellent. And what a way to teach them what's important to them and learn the value of money and how we can choose to spend our money in a way that serves us.
Exactly. Thanks.
Yeah. You touched on budgeting and how it can feel restrictive. So it also can feel very daunting. And people, I think, put it off because they're like afraid to do it. So, what are maybe some tips or tools that you can also share about how you make that budgeting a little bit more manageable?
Yeah. So some people are numbers people like myself, right? And so we get into the nitty gritty. It doesn't overwhelm us. Now, not everybody is like that. So if you're the person that's like, less is better, then what I suggest is immediately you're going to go to 3 categories. You're going to have your bills that have a due date, they're due every single month. So right there, you have one category. Then you have your spending between paydays where you're like, okay, groceries, fuel, something, if you've got boys or your husband who get the haircut every 2 weeks or whatever, that's going to throw in their dog food if that's an often buy. And you're going to throw that in that account. And then you're going to have your everything else. So you only have to figure out those 2. And then whatever's left over from your income, ends up being what I call sinking funds and saving buckets. These are for those school fees, your Christmases, your birthdays, those types of things. You start organizing it better in that third category. That's all you need to keep your eyes on. Bills, make sure they get paid every single month. And then you're spending and you know what you're spending on groceries and gas and trying to stay within that. There's fluctuations for sure. So, like I said, if you want to look back at last year, you can get an average. However, if those numbers overwhelm you, just go, it's usually about this much and go from there because a budget is a working document. It changes, it's going to flow. And the other thing is what the daunting is sometimes everybody thinks I have to create a budget every single month. The goal is to take these three numbers and just massage them. Just make them fit better to what is actually happening if you didn't do that review for the last 12 months, which even then you're going to have changes, different things happen, and just realize, okay, I have these three numbers. It's just got to ebb and flow, give and take. And how does this work? And how do I know to keep moving forward? Hopefully that kind of helps them realize that they don't need to do 20 categories that sometimes they see elsewhere as I've got to track my pet food and my groceries and my clothing and my gifts and all. You can summarize them together in three good categories and support yourself that way.
Excellent advice there. I think you're right. People, and myself included, have had an Excel sheet and it's got everything listed on there. And that's just so time consuming. And so I love this idea of just having three big categories, two that are more specific, and then the third that's kind of your catch all. And really, that makes it so much easier to manage, I think. And I could see how I would be more consistent in working something like that than one that's as detailed as I was doing in the past. And there was the point that you made in there about these numbers are not set in stone, right? All of these things, I love how you said they're malleable, you're massaging them because they do fluctuate. We're not spending the same on groceries every time. We're not spending the same on gasoline for our cars, or our electric and gas bills are going to fluctuate, right? So these numbers aren't going to be static. And so we just need to have some working knowledge of what they approximately are, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And some people get so, this wasn't exact. And then that's when they want to give up. And from that frustration, is no, just go, all right, what does that mean? What is it do I need to do to capture that better, to see that? Or is it just a one time and it's not a big deal? So recognizing, or the other thing women will do, or I guess men could as well, is we put it on us. How come I didn't have that right? How come I didn't know that? And immediately, like that shame and that guilt is just weighing down, and then you don't even want to deal with it. So get out of those feelings when something like that happens and just go, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this for next time? Because guess what? There will be a next time.
Yeah, that's true. So I want to talk now about maybe some steps that the listeners can take because I think this financial, like reviewing this information gives you a clarity, right? And so, what are some steps that the listeners can take that they can identify maybe areas of improvement? How can they work toward that larger goal, whatever it is that they dreamed of that they want to achieve?
Yeah. Okay. Let's touch on it a couple different ways. So, as you're heading into reviewing your finances for now and looking at it, if you're somebody that doesn't like a lot of detail, but you're like, I really wonder what's going on in, what are those categories that pop up for you? What are the things you're like, I wonder how much I spend on X? Or do we really spend that much money on, and again, enter X? So, really get curious about your own finances without having to do a complete review. And if there's an area you're like, I know we're spending a lot here and I just don't want to anymore, go review it, just that area, and get yourself moving forward. But then, as you're also thinking about your vision and your dream, as you look at your expenses, do they serve that purpose? Number one, do they serve you today to keep you going, right? And you say yes to everything, but does it also detract from the future? Or is this something that you could do that give and take away again? But as you have that vision, taking those steps, what are those milestones that you need to get there? My client with 100 doors, she still has yet to buy her own home. That is obviously step one for her to get qualified, to find a home, to make the purchase, and then, go from there. Then her next one is to amass 1 million in assets of hers. So she's thinking that'll be about 5. And so that's her next step. And then for her, who is somebody that loves checklists, I said, then make the steps. She's probably going to have 50 steps where somebody else would be okay with, I'm just going to amass 4 more homes. And so recognizing that these little steps, these little achievements are what is going to boost us to continually reach forward to that end goal. As I was saving and building, I was also, because I did have a pension, I was getting closer in years. But when I took that 40% cut in pay, I had to be ready. I had to be able to take that 40% out of what I was living on and live on the rest of it. And really massaging it down to what my essential goal was, but knowing, okay, this month or this quarter, I'm going to work on cutting back on groceries and how can I be better about it, or meal planning or whatever it is. Really getting focused on one area at a time. That's another thing I really like to advise people. Pick one area, learn about it, apply it, get good at it, and then choose another area. If you spread yourself too thin, you're not going to see that momentum and see that achievement and feel that achievement so that you can keep that motivation. Because I know that's the biggest thing, consistency and motivation with finances, because it is such a long journey. It is something that is endless in a sense. For me, my budget focused journey is what I like to call it, was 15 years. 15 years is a long time. It's not over for me. I've reached that dream. I still have other things I need to fulfill and do as well. And so just remembering that as you go and just looking at just the next step, even though you might have laid out 3 steps or 12 steps, whatever feels good to you, like just keep your eye on what you're doing and what that next step is. Don't get too far ahead of yourself.
Yeah, excellent point there for sure. I think that anytime we try to do too much at once, we all get overwhelmed, right? And so looking at just one category at a time and getting a handle on it is such a great way to ultimately achieve the overall review and change in all of the areas, right? But you can only do it one step at a time. Such a great point. And I love that because we do just allow these things to become overwhelming feeling when you're trying to look at the whole big picture, you're trying to do too much at once. And so one step at a time gets you there, right?
Exactly.
Let's talk now about how, as we're crafting this future financial goal or plan, maybe how they can feel like they're still enjoying the money that they have. They're still secure. It's not that they're taking away from their everyday living.
Yes. Okay. Make sure you can pay all your bills, right? That's how you can be secure. Do you have enough money? Are you paying them on time? Maybe even get them on automatic pay. Right there, that takes away a lot of decisions, a lot of rethinking. Every time you go to pay something online, really, I have to pay this much. Oh my gosh. And it really can be fatiguing on us. And then I love to talk about balancing now and the future. And that was where my short term goal and my long term goal really helped out. But another tidbit is to make sure your budget has an element of fun. So, what fits in your budget that supports you and gets you excited and that you enjoy spending money on, that you can give yourself an amount and just enjoy that and realize that whether it's 1 or 2, it's up to you. You know your budget best. But for myself, I spend money on books because I'm a reader. I'm an avid fiction reader. That's where all my time goes to. So that's where a lot of my money goes to. But I have a reserved amount I give myself every single month. Or yes, I would overspend. And so it's good to curb that. It's good to not just go nonchalant because I thoroughly love it. Because number one, I don't need to buy 100 books in a month because I cannot read 100 books in a month. So it's like recognizing reality as well. So whatever it is that brings you the most joy. I'd love to share about a client who came to me with debt equal to what he made in a year. It was his third time in this situation. His dad was like, something is wrong. You've got to figure it out, which we did. But as we were getting there, and I was like, okay, you really have to scale back. And now I do not do this with all of my clients. His situation was different. But as we were doing that, I'm like, you can cover your basics. Here's those items, but we do want to include one thing for fun. What of the things that you enjoy do you want to keep in your budget? And he chose his Apple Music, which is only $10 a month. It was good and it fit, but it provided him mental health, physical fitness. It just fun time with kids. He had 3 kids. And so recognizing that served him in a lot of areas of his life, even though we were scaling back, you have to have that element in your budget. You work hard every day, whether you go to work or you work for yourself, you work hard. And yes, you do deserve a benefit, but you deserve a defined amount. You can't just overspend because then that will get you in a horrible situation. And then what do you do? I like to look at it a couple different ways. Do you have a short-term goal? You can fill that and driving that with your long-term, or is there just that one thing for fun? This is what we do. I know some families, they just go on a vacation every single year. That's their thing for fun. Then that's what you do and that's what you budget for. Then you can take from the other places, hopefully because you prioritize. Again, like I said, top 3, bottom 3, there's a whole bunch of others in between, but you could prioritize those as well. And you could start cutting off at the bottom and you probably would not care if those things were gone, if you honestly think about it.
Yeah, fantastic advice. I love that for sure. And I think that often people do spend to their limit of their income. And in the society that we have, unfortunately, it's encouraged by advertisers to buy the next thing. And people can often find themselves in large debt. And so remembering that we don't need it all, we can't possibly have it all anyway, is a great reminder. Like you pointed out, it is so important to remember that there is room for fun. You've got to have something in your budget that allows you to use the money that you are working hard for fun, whatever it is for you. And that's such a great reminder. So thank you for sharing that with us again. And to kind of change gears a little bit, I want to have you share with us the podcast that you have and tell us the title, tell us how often and what it is that you're talking about on the show.
Yeah, so I started Wealthy After 40 last April, and my focus is for Gen Xers. I release episodes every Tuesday. I did take a break in December, but I don't have any foreseeable breaks in the future. And I focus on anything that's personal finance, debt, savings, financial freedom. And then I also love to include anything that impacts Gen Xers as the sandwich generation with aging parents, adult kids. We got kids still in college who we may or may not be supporting, and just segueing all of these things. Employer benefits, what do those look like? What do I care? I just try to bring all of that information so that as a Gen Xer, whether you're 43 to, I think we're at 58 now, that you can benefit and do better with your personal finance and know those steps you need to take. I think it'll be in February, an episode. She's younger. She's not a Gen Xer, but she was caring for her grandmother and just sharing about how long-term care may or may not be something you should consider. And so I just love to pull in people with a lot of those information that we may benefit immediately, whether it's in our lives, our parents' lives, our kids' lives, or that we may need to consider in the next 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I have listened to your show as well, and I find it just fantastic, full of useful information. Highly recommend the listeners check it out. So thank you for sharing that. And then, as I always love to ask my guests, if there's any books that they think are beneficial or would be helpful for the listeners, if you would like to share that with us now.
Yeah. So Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. It's an easier read. Even though it does sound technical with that psychology in there, just why we may be thinking the way we should or why we should change our thinking. It's really supportive of that. And hopefully it'll give you a different outlet on money, positive, hopefully help you on this last part of your journey and getting to that financial vision and maybe even how to create that financial vision.
Excellent recommendation. Thank you for that. And I'll include that in the show notes for sure for the listeners, as well as a link to your podcast. So, Dalene, thank you again for joining us and sharing this information. And I have thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, you're just sharing such fabulous knowledge, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Before we close out, I would love for you to share where the listeners would be able to find you. Also, if they have questions for you or if they want to follow along the journey that you're taking, where would they be able to do that?
Yep. Come find me on Instagram at elevate_finances. If you have questions, you can DM me there or go check out my website, www.elevatefinances.us. It has all the information about me, about my services, and why I do what I do, as well as a free community.
Wonderful. I'll include that information in the show notes as well. Thank you for sharing that. And again, Dalene, thank you so much for joining us. It was an honor to have you on again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll talk more soon. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.